This is the perfect video if you want to dive into digital painting in Clip Studio Paint. I will show you all the basics you need to get started while I take you through all the steps of painting this landscape. Clip Studio Paint, the sponsor of this video, is a digital painting software which can be used on multiple platforms, including the iPad. In case you are new to Clip Studio Paint, you can actually try it out for free. I will leave a link in the description for you. For this tutorial, we're working in Clip Studio Paint's simple mode. So that means that if you're working on your iPad, your working space should look like this. If it looks something like this instead, then you are in studio mode. The way to switch to simple mode is by going to this little icon at the top, and then over here, you'll find switch to simple mode. So if you got that, you're ready to go. So nothing can hold you back. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do is create a canvas on which we can work. You need to tap Draw here in the main menu of Clip Studio Paint. We'll tap Draw, and then we'll just make a screen size canvas. So tap this, and now we have our workspace with, on the right side, the layers, and on the left side, all the tools we can use. And when you tap the colored circle here, you can find the color palette. I have linked this color palette in the description. You can get it for free, so you can use the same colors as I'm using during this tutorial. Just be aware that to import the color palette into Clip Studio Paint, you need to be in the studio mode instead of the simple mode. So let's switch to studio mode over here. And then in your menus, you will see the color sets here. If you're not seeing it, then you need to go to Window, and here you'll see all like the sub windows that are open right now. And you need to make sure that color set is turned on. And then when you have that little menu with the color set, then you can tap these three little lines here, and that will open up another menu, and then you can tap Import Color Set. Then you just need to navigate to the set you have downloaded from my link, and then you can import it. And now we can go back to the simple mode by tapping this little icon and then go to switch to simple mode. Now we're totally ready to get started. The first thing we're going to do is add a background color. We can fill our entire canvas by using the paint bucket over here. And for the color, let's tap our colored circle. And let's grab the second color over here. And then you can just tap the screen to fill everything. Next, we'll make a new layer. You can do that by tapping the plus over here. And then on this new layer, we are going to draw a wobbly line. And for our color, we are going to use this one over here. That's the 7th color in this first row. And then over here, you can select a brush. Let's go to the pens over here. And then use the G pen here at the top. Now let's zoom out a little bit like this, so we can see the edges of our canvas. And here at the bottom, you will see the size slider for your brush and the opacity slider. The opacity should be at 100%. We can set the size to around 20%, for instance, around that number. And then we can make a slightly wobbly line from left to right. Make sure you start all the way at the left, and the height should be around 1/3 of the height. So we'll start here, and we'll make a slightly wobbly line from left to right. And now we can fill the area underneath. So we can tap the paint bucket again, and then just tap here to fill that area. Next, we'll make another layer. So again, we'll tap the plus over here. And this time for the color, we'll grab this one over here. That's the 7th color in the 3rd row. Now make sure to grab your brush again. So tap the brush icon. And now we are going to make our foreground plane where our tree will be. We'll start a little bit higher than the line we have just created. So we'll start about here. And then we'll wobble our way down slightly. And then we'll go to the right over here. And make sure that the lines touch the sides of your canvas. Then you can tap the paint bucket again and tap here to fill the area underneath. Next, we'll make a few more planes, and I want the next plane we'll create to be underneath this grass plane that we have here. So first we need to tap this layer and then tap the plus to create a new layer in between. Then for our color, we are going to use this one over here. That's the 8 color in the first row. And make sure to grab your brush again. And then we'll start here at the bottom because we want to create a closed shape, so you can't just start here. Then your shape will be floating. So we need to start here. Then we'll go up like this. Make a slightly jagged shape. Then we'll go up here. And then down. And then to the right to create a closed shape. Then you can tap the paint bucket again, tap in this area to fill it. Next, we'll make another shape on top of this one. So first we'll tap the plus for a new layer again, and then we'll grab our brush, and for the color, we'll use this first color in the second row. And then let's start at the edge of the canvas again. So like over here, then we'll go up. And then we'll make a wobbly line here. Go down a bit and up. Go for something like this. And then tap the bucket, tap underneath to fill the area. And we'll make another layer on top of this one, another shape. Let's tap the plus. Let's grab our brush. Then let's go to the colors. And we'll use this 8 color in the second row. Then we'll go in here and we'll add a shape on top of our rock formation here. We'll start about here, and you can add some extra jagged shapes. Just some extra little details. So you can go outside the shape a little bit. Make it nice and jagged, and then we'll connect this on the left side. Again, make it jagged and irregular. And then once your shape is closed, you can tap the bucket and then tap inside the shape to fill it. Next, we are going to create some gradients. Let's first zoom out a little bit and let's go to our sky layer. That's the bottom one over here. And I would like to grab a soft brush. Let's go to the brush menu and then let's go to spray and grab the soft brush. Then for the color, I'd like to use this third color in the first row. It's a lighter color than the base color of our sky. Now the opacity, I have that at 62%. You can make the brush a bit bigger. You can nicely see the size of your brush here. Let's go for somewhere around 360. Yeah, just around that number, or 350. And I will go over this lower right area. Make these rounded motions, or slightly rounded. Gently light up that lower right area. And you can go over multiple times so that this area is the lightest, and then it gently fades as you move to the upper left area. Then for this top area, we'll grab a darker color. We'll grab this first color in the first row. And then let's go over here and darken that a bit. And let's say you feel like the transition isn't soft enough, and then you can use a blur. Let's tap this icon here at the bottom, then go to Effects, and then apply it to the current layer. And here you can pick Gaussian blur. And then you can use the slider to increase or decrease the blur. And I just want a little bit. Let's just go for like 20. And then you can tap OK. Next, let's move to this layer. And since this area, it's far away, I'd like it to be slightly blurred. Let's just zoom in a little bit. So I want the edge to be a little bit blurred, and we can do that with our effects again. So tap this icon, then tap Effects, apply it to current layer, and then use Gaussian blur. Slide up a bit. I don't want too much, maybe just like, let's see, maybe just like 5. So very, very subtle. Then tap OK. And then I want to apply a gradient here. Now to do that without going outside of the shape, we need to lock some pixels. We can tap this layer and here you'll see this list. You can scroll here and you can lock the transparent pixels. So whatever is transparent on this layer, well, that's locked. You can't paint on that anymore. So let's just tap it so that it's blue. And you can see this little lock here. And now we can use our soft brush again, and we can add a gradient here. For the color, I'd like to use this 8 color in the first row. And then let's just go over this area over here, slightly darkening that, creating a nice gradient, and also a little bit over here. I think that adds some nice variety. Next, we'll add some texture and some interest to this plane over here. That's this layer. Now again, I don't want to go outside of this shape. So let's tap this layer, scroll down and tap lock transparent pixels. Then for the color, I'd like to use this one over here, 8 color in the second row. And for the brush, I'd like to use something textured. Let's go to the sketching brushes. And the charcoal and pastel brushes, for instance, are nicely textured. We can definitely use that on this layer to add that interest. Let's start with the pastel brush. And let's see the size. You can tap with 2 fingers, by the way, to undo anything you have done. Let's keep the opacity at 100%. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller, around 20%. Or it's not really percent, it's just 20. And let's make some horizontal strokes here, adding some gentle texture. And I also want to use that other brush, that charcoal brush. Let's grab that and let's check the size. I think that's okay. Opacity at 100, size around 15. And let's also use this for some of these horizontal strokes, adding some interest here. Then let's also add some green. Let's go to our colors and grab this first color in the second row. And let's grab our pastel brush again and go over this right side. And then let's go a little bit darker. Let's go for this one, third color in the second row. It's more of a bluish color, but I think it will work nicely. And for the brush, let's grab the charcoal brush again. And then let's just add some of this texture. And perhaps we can also use this color. That's the 7th color in the 3rd row. Add some of that as well. And if you want to make it a bit softer, then you could go to that pastel brush and then go over here. And that just blends it together a bit. You could do that even more by using the soft brush under sprays. Grab that, and then we could use this first color in the 3rd row, a bit bluish. And we could use that to go over there and really bring those colors together a bit. For our next step, I'd like to work on top of this layer, our rock formation. We'll make a new layer on top of it by tapping the plus, and then we'll tap that new layer, and then we are going to clip it to the layer below. It's a bit like Alpha Lock, so whatever we paint, it'll only show up on our rock formation, but this time it's on a separate layer, which can be really useful. Now for our brush, let's go back to the pens and use the G pen. And for the color, we are going to use this second color in the 3rd row. And now we are going to add some shapes to our rock. Let's zoom in. Let's go in here and let's focus on adding some shapes on the right sides here. And you can either color them in by hand, make them nice and jagged, or of course you can make closed shapes and then drag in colors. I want these shapes to be nice and jagged. Let's make a big one over here. So I'll make the bottom parts really jagged. And I'll go to about here. I want this side to be in the light. So I'll stop around this area. And like this, if you have a closed shape, then you can just grab the bucket, tap in the area to fill it, and then go back to your brush. And you really don't have to create the exact same shapes as I'm using. Just make sure that there are like these gaps in between. We can also make the brush a bit smaller, I think, maybe around 10% for a bit more control and a bit more like pointy, jagged areas. But just make sure that you keep some gaps in between. This will give a nice, well, like a feeling of rock with these jagged shapes. Of course, you can also first make a bunch of shapes and then use the paint bucket later to fill them. Now you can also just make a screenshot once I have created these shapes and then use that as a reference for yourself. But just create something like this, some random jagged shapes, maybe one over here. And perhaps a few here. And perhaps some smaller ones in between some areas. And then just grab the paint bucket. You could zoom in even more and then just tap in those areas. If you get some gaps, what you could do is go to this little icon and you can play around with the tolerance. You could lower that or higher that to adjust the amount that it fills. And you can also just grab your brush to fix some areas, add some more pointy parts. Next, let's add the light part, the light area here on the right side. Let's make a new layer. Let's tap the plus, and I want this to be clipped to this layer as well. So we can just tap this layer and tap clip to layer below. Then for our color, we'll grab this one over here. That's the third color in the third row. And we'll do something similar. We'll make jagged shapes again. And again, we'll make sure that we'll have gaps in between. So make sure that you keep those darker gaps. But of course, what you could also do is, for instance, create a shape like this and then fill it with your paint bucket. And then you could grab the eraser, and I have it set to the hard brush. And you could use that to create some more gaps, to make the brush smaller, maybe around 7. Opacity at 100. And then you could go in and then just create more cracks. So you can definitely switch back and forth between brush and eraser. And that way create these nice jagged shapes. So let's go back to the brush and continue working on these shapes. Just create something random Perhaps over here. And over here, like on these right sides of these rocks. And maybe over here. Again, you can make a screenshot if you would like to use my shapes as a reference. Then let's grab the paint bucket, drop in color in these areas, and then perhaps with the brush, fix some areas, add some extra pointy parts, or grab the eraser, of course, and add some extra cracks. But if it looks something like this, then you're fine. Also, by the way, if you want your main rock to look more like pointy and jagged, what you could also do is go to that base layer of your rock, use the eraser, and then go over some areas and make them more pointy. Because of course you don't want them to look rounded. Now let's add gradients to these layers that we have just created on top of this. We'll start with this one. We can tap this layer while it's clipped to the layer below. We can tap it and then lock the transparent pixels. So this is a really great advantage of putting the shape on a separate layer instead of just painting on this shape over here, because now we can lock these pixels and create a gradient here without going over that base like rock formation shape. So we have locked the pixels. Now for our brush, let's go to the sprays and use the soft brush. And for the color, let's use this one. First color in the third row. And let's go over this lower area, adding a little bit of a bluish tone there. Just like this. Then we'll do the same for the light area. So first go to that layer, tap it, and then scroll down and lock the transparent pixels. And for the color, we'll use this one, fourth color in the third row. And then we'll just go over this top area here, gently lightening that up. Now let's also add some extra color to our base rock formation. Let's tap this layer, scroll down and lock the transparent pixels. And then for our brush, I'd like to go to the sketching brushes again. And let's use the pastel brush. And for the color, let's grab this green. First color in the second row. And let's add a little bit of green to this lower area. Just like this. And then next, I'd like to add some of this second color in the second row. And then for the brush, I'd like to use the charcoal brush. And then let's go over here, add a little bit of this over here, adding some extra interest. And let's also add a bit of this to this layer over here. That's this area. And again, with this brush, we're just going to extend this a bit. Add some of that lighter color, making it merge more with that other layer. I also want to make the transition here a bit more like jagged. It's a bit too clean here on the underside. So a way to do that is by using the eraser. Let's go there and let's use the netted eraser. And then we need to go to this layer. That's where I want to do the erasing. So that's layer 6. And let's just go along the edge with jagged motions. I have the size set to, well, 3.6, so around 4, and the opacity is at 90. So we can just gently go along that edge, making some like wiggly, jagged motions to make it blend with the other layer some more. So you should get something like this. I also want to add some texture to this background area. Let's go to that layer over here. Let's grab a bit of a textured brush by going to the brushes, and yeah, let's use the charcoal brush. And for the color, let's use this one over here. Second color in the third row. And let's just go over here with these horizontal strokes. We can also lower the opacity a bit to, let's say, 75%. To make it a bit more subtle. And also over here. And what you could also do is just grab local colors by tapping and holding your finger on the screen. And then go over with those to make the colors blend a bit more. So just pick colors as you go. It will make it look bit more soft, but still textured. So it looks as if there's something going on there, like there's trees or bushes there. So this looks good. Now let's just organize things a bit, save some layer space. To merge layers, you can tap this layer, for instance, that's on top of this one. Then you can scroll down and go to merge with layer below. Now we can do the same for this one, tap it, scroll down, and use merge with layer below. We could also merge it with this layer here. We can just tap and hold it, drag it over here, and make it merge with this layer. So tap it, scroll down, and use merge with layer below. Now let's go to this layer where we have this bushy area. First thing I like to do is make the edge a bit more rough. It's way too clean now. Now to do that, first, I'd like to grab the local color. So you can just tap and hold to get that. And then for the brush, I think maybe we can use the crayon. Let's check that out. I think that's actually nice. The color changes a little bit, but that's okay. Let's make the brush size a little bit smaller, like 30%. Opacity is at 100. And let's just go along these edges with some rounded motions, creating a bit of like a bushy effect. And don't worry about the effect that you get right now. We'll be fine. Just add some interesting shapes. Maybe a little bit over here as well. Now let's add more texture to this area, but first let's lock our transparent pixel. So tap the layer, then lock transparent pixels. And now we can go ahead and have fun and add color and texture. And for the colors, I'd like to use these 4 colors. So that's the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th color in that second row. We can use these 4 to add texture here. Let's start with this one, a 4th color in the second row. And for the brushes, let's just start with the charcoal brush. And let's make it a bit bigger, maybe like around 50. And well, we can stick with 75 for our opacity. And let's just add a bit of this. Just a little bit of random texture. Then let's go smaller, around 20%. And let's grab a darker color. This one, 3rd color in the second row. And let's just go here. Add some darker stuff. Also over here. Let's also zoom out a little bit so we can easily see what the effect will be of what we're doing. And let's go to our brush menu. Perhaps we can also use a spray. Let's use the spray brush here. It gives a very nice texture. The opacity is at 100, size at 200. And let's just go over here, add some of that texture. And let's also go lighter. Let's grab this color, 5th color in the 2nd row. That adds some nice interest. And maybe we can soften it a bit by going to the sketching brushes and using the pastel brush. We can grab some local colors and just go over here. Soften that a bit. And maybe add some of that 3rd color in the 2nd row. Add a bit of that over here. And then here I'd like to add some leafy stuff. Let's go to the brushes, and then you can go to decoration. And then here, well, it's not all the way at the top, but over here you'll find leaves. And then let's grab this color, 4th color in the 2nd row. Opacity is at 59, go for something like 60. Size is around 60 as well. We can go over here first with this color. And then we can go a little bit darker with this one, 3rd color in the 2nd row. Just add some dabs. Then go even darker with this one. That's the 6th color in the 2nd row. And we can also add a lighter touch by using this one, 5th color in the 2nd row. And over here, let's add some lighter leaves. So we get the effect of some bushes here. Let's also go back to the sketching brushes and to the charcoal brush and to this color. That's the 4th color in the 2nd row. And let's add a little bit more texture. Make the brush a bit smaller, around 13. Just want a bit more texture. Maybe grab that darker color, 3rd color in the 2nd row. Just a bit more texture, some diagonal lines. I think this looks good, and I think it's time to move on to our grassy plain in the foreground. Let's start by making the edge more rough again. So we'll go to our top layer. Then for the brush, let's use that crayon again. Let's grab the local color. And then we'll go along the edge, just adding some randomness there by making these short, a bit of like circular motions. We can go along the entire edge, making it look less clean. So like this. Then let's lock the transparent pixels. So we'll tap the layer, scroll down, lock the transparent pixels. And I just want a whole bunch of texture here first. So let's go to our brushes and let's use the charcoal brush. And for the color, and again, we are going to use these colors over here. Let's start by grabbing this one. That's the 5th color in the 2nd row. And let's just check. It's a bit small. Let's make the brush bigger, maybe around 200. Let's just go over here and get a base of texture. This is a bit light. We can also use a darker color, 3rd color in the 2nd row. And this is really just a start. So something like this. Then let's also use that that leaves brush. Definitely use that to add some interest here. Let's make the brush a bit bigger, maybe around 130. Let's just go over here. Let's also grab that fourth color in the second row. It's really at this point about adding a lot of texture in here and a lot of variety in color. So don't worry too much. Then let's go back to our brushes, to the sketching brushes, and use the pastel brush. And then let's soften everything a little bit. Let's grab this color, third color in the second row. Let's make the brush a bit bigger, around 160. And then the fourth color in the second row. And also a little bit of that lighter one, fifth color in the second row. A little bit over here. And of course, in Clip Studio Paint, you can also find a grass brush. Let's go to Decoration. And underneath the leaves brush, you will find the grass brush. Let's just try that out. It's at 234, around that number for the size. Opacity at 44, so it remains a bit subtle. We can go over here. We can grab local colors and get some of that grassy texture in there. But just keep it a bit subtle. Don't go over with totally different colors. That will make it look more unnatural. So just grab local colors as you go. So we got that base texture, and now we can use this to build upon. And of course, in some areas you can grab a lighter color and then go over a darker area. And you can also, in the color palette, grab that lightest color, fifth color in the second row, and use that for some lighter grass patches. And then let's also add like the suggestion of some very small flowers. Let's go to the spray brushes, use the spray, and now we can grab a light color like this one, fourth color in the first row. And then we can use that to add the idea of some flowers. And also just some extra texture. Maybe that's a bit too much. And actually, the droplet brush can also be very useful for this. It's also under spray. The size is at 250, opacity at 100. And just in a few areas, you could add some of these droplets. We'll work on our grass a bit more later, and we'll add some rocks and maybe a few more flowers. But for now, let's start working on our main character, our tree. Let's place it on a new layer. We'll tap the plus. And for our brush, we'll go back to our pen brushes and use the G pen. And for the color, let's use this second color in the fourth row. And I'd like the tree to be about, well, over here. Let's just start with a line going up like this. And then another one over here. And then let's just start defining the branches. Go over here. Make sure that the branches become thinner as you move outward. And also don't worry if your tree looks a bit different than mine. It doesn't have to be identical. And also lots of these branches will get covered by foliage. So you don't have to worry about the shapes too much. Just make sure, like I said, that they become thinner as you move outward. And of course, we like to have lots of side branches. Lots of branches over here. And here at the bottom, of course, we need to close our shape. Add some of those root-like shapes. And once you're sure that the shape is closed, you could grab the bucket and fill the shape. And then continue with your brush, adding more branches, little side branches. And of course, you can also make a screenshot of my tree and then use that as a reference if you like. We just need loads of branches. Let's see, every once in a while you'll have to zoom out a bit to check if you like where it's going. I want the tree trunk to be nice and thick, nice and broad. Now I do feel like my tree might be a bit too far or a bit too close to the edge. Now you can easily adjust your layer, adjust your tree by going to this little icon. There you have like the move and transform tool. And you can just grab your tree, move it around. And of course, you can also scale it by using the sliders, or you can use mesh transformation, and then you can just use these points here to adjust your tree without having to draw or paint it all over again. Maybe we can move this up a little bit so that it's not so close to the edge. And then let's just tap OK. Now let's merge that lower part a bit more with the grass. Let's do that with our eraser. Let's set it to the netted eraser. And then just like with the mountain, let's just go over here, add some use some wiggly motions to make it blend with the grass some more. Make it look a bit more natural. Then for our foliage, let's make a new layer. Let's tap the plus, and then let's go to the brushes. And this time we'll go to the brush section here and use the pointillism brush. And for our color, let's use this one over here. That's the 5th color in the 3rd row. I have the size of this brush set to around 73% or 73 points and 100% opacity. Now let's just make rounded motions here and create our tree crown. So let's go around here. And we'll be covering branches, but still try to leave some areas open. So we'll leave a little gap here. We'll make some foliage here. And then once it looks something like this, let's also make a layer underneath our branches. So first tap this one, then tap the plus, and then on this layer we can make some foliage behind our branches. Just a little bit, something like this. Next, we'll start adding lighter touches to our tree. Let's go to this layer. Let's make sure that we lock the transparent pixels so we can't go out of the shape, outside of our shape. And then let's just use these colors over here. So these four and this one for our tree. Let's start with this color. That's the sixth color in the third row. And let's go over like the top left area to add some light there. It's very subtle. I hope you can see it on camera. It's just a start. And then go lighter by using this color, seventh color in the third row. And let's go lighter, making rounded motions on the top right areas. And now we can go even lighter by moving to this one, 8th color in the third row. And now it's really starting to take shape. And for some extra texture, we could actually also use some of the spray brushes, like the droplets. Just go over there with this. It feels a bit like random little leaves. I think that looks really nice. Then let's go back to our pointillism brush and to an even lighter color, this one, first color in the fourth row. And let's add the lightest touches. Again, in the top right area. Make sure that you leave darker gaps. And we can also add some darker touches with this color. That's the 5th color in the third row. And use that in those lower left areas. And let's also use this on that foliage that is behind our branches. So tap this layer and let's lock the transparent pixels. And then let's add a darker touch there. It's very subtle. Not sure if you can see it on camera, but it's a bit darker. And then let's go back to this layer. Let's use a little bit more spray, that droplet brush. And let's use this lightest color for just a few drops in the lightest areas. And then I'd also like to add some loose leaves. Let's first turn off the lock transparent pixels. And then for our brush, let's use the brush pen over here. And let's just pick colors as we go. Let's go in here, grab a color over here. Now the brush size is around 40, opacity at 100. And we can use this brush to add some loose, like flying little leaves. They don't have to be attached to the tree crown. It adds this nice playfulness. You can change the direction a bit with your pen. And we can also grab lighter greens. For instance, here, you can put those in front of the darker areas. But this way, by hand, you can add extra interest to your tree. Let's grab an even lighter color. all around our tree. And you can continue doing this until you feel like your tree looks interesting enough. It's really fun to create an expressive looking tree this way. I'll go for something like this. And now let's move on to the bark, the tree bark. Now to add texture to our tree trunk, first we need to go to the layer, of course, tap it and lock our transparent pixels. Then for the brush, I'd like to go to the sketching brushes and use the crayon. And for the color, we'll start off by using this one over here, fourth color in the fourth row. I have the size set to around 30, opacity at 100, and let's just go over, well, mostly over the right side of the tree. And again, leave some gaps. I hope you can see this on camera. It's very subtle, but focus on the right side of the tree. Next, we'll go lighter. So you'll definitely be seeing this, the fifth color in the fourth row. And we'll use that to add light to the bark, to the tree trunk on the right sides, but leave in some gaps to show that bark. There are some creases in there. And add that light to the right sides. Also add that over here a little bit. There might be some light passing through. Perhaps we can get the suggestion of some branches moving down here. Little dab over here. We can also make the brush a bit smaller, like 15. Adding a bit more like details. Now let's go even lighter by using this one over here, this color, third color in the third row. And let's just accentuate some of these edges. Just adding a few more details. A little bit of light. So you'll end up with something like this. I do feel like our tree is still a bit close to the top, to the edge of the canvas. Let's slide our layer menu open so that it gets bigger. And then let's go to the top one and then tap this folder icon. Let's tap it so we get a folder. And now we can tap and hold our layers and put them in that folder. I do need this one to be on top here. And on this one, make sure they are arranged in the proper way. So we have this one at the top, then the branches, and then this one. Then let's close our folder. We have our folder selected, and now we can tap this icon to move everything that's in the folder. So we can move our tree down a little bit so we get a bit more space. And yeah, I think this is actually a nice placement. So let's tap OK. And of course, this way, when you have your layers in a folder, you could also do that mesh transformation with your tree. If you'd like to adjust some things at this point, then that's the way to go. Now we can close our menu again by swiping to the right. Next, I'd like to add some rocks to our scene. Let's just tap the plus for a new layer on top of all the others. And for our brush, let's go to the pens and then use the G pen. And for the color, we'll grab this one over here, sixth color in the second row. And let's start over here, for instance, for a nice big rock in our foreground. And then let's add some over here. Perhaps it's like 2. And perhaps a little rock over here. Maybe it's also 2 little rocks. And then let's add a slightly bigger one over here. And a small one over here. Then let's grab the paint bucket and tap in these areas to fill them. Now to make the edges more like crisp or angular, you could go to the eraser and use the hard one. And you could go like along the edges, make some areas a bit more jagged. So just something like this. Next, let's make a new layer on top of this one. Let's tap the plus and let's clip this layer to the layer below. So tap the layer, then use clip to layer below. Then for the color, we'll grab this one. That's the 7th color in the 2nd row. And then we are going to add some lighter areas. Of course, we do need to grab the brush and then we'll make some lighter shapes. Make sure they are closed. Make lighter shapes on the right sides of these rocks. And for instance, you can leave a little gap here to indicate that these are like separate rocks. Then use the paint bucket, fill these areas. And then on this one, I'd like to add a bit of a gradient. Now to make sure that we don't go over this rock with our brush, we can grab the selection tool, that's this one. And then here at the bottom, you can tap this to select your way of selecting. I'd like to use the lasso tool and then just make a selection around here like this. Then we can go to the brushes and go to the spray brushes and use the soft brush. And then we can go over this top area. When you have a selection active, you can only paint inside that selection. So go over there, add a bit of light like this, and then turn off your selection by tapping clear selection here at the top. Next, I'd like to use the eraser again. So let's tap that and add some cracks. So we can go in here. Let's make the brush a little bit bigger, somewhere around 12. Add some cracks in here. Maybe a big one over here. You can just play around with this. Then let's add even more light. Let's tap the plus for another layer, then clip that to the layer below. And then for the color, we'll go lighter. We'll grab this one over here, 3rd color in the 3rd row. Let's make sure to grab the brush and go to the pens and then to G pen again. And then let's make some lighter shapes on the right sides of the rocks. Over here as well. Make sure you create closed shapes. Or just color it in by hand, of course. If it's really small, then that's a good way as well. And then let's grab the paint bucket and fill these. Next, let's merge these layers. So first, let's go to this one and tap it, and then scroll down to merge with layer below, and do the same for this one. Tap it, go to merge to layer below, and then on this one, I'd like to use the eraser again. Let's go to the eraser, set it to the netted eraser, and then go along the edges with some jagged motions, getting that little bit of that effect of grass covering those rocks. So something like this, and then for these as well. Jagged motions. This will nicely merge them with the grass. This one. Then let's also add some shadow. Let's go to our grass layer over here. Let's tap the plus for a new layer on top. Then let's tap that layer and then tap normal over here. Then we can scroll down and set it to multiply. That way we can just grab a local color and then paint on top, and then it will get darker. Multiply is great for shadows. Let's grab a brush. Let's go to the sketching brushes. I think the pastel brush will be nice. Let's just check that out. Let's grab a local color here. And then we can go and make that brush smaller, definitely. Let's see. It's at 15. We can lower the opacity a bit to like around 75. And then add a bit of a shadow on the left sides of these rocks. Also over here. This one. And also around a tree. Making these horizontal motions. So you get something like this. And the great thing about having this on a separate layer with multiply is that you can play around with the opacity. You can use the slider to make it lighter or darker. Let's just set it to, let's set it to around 75. Next, I would like to nicely frame our landscape. We'll do that by adding some leaves to the foreground, very dark leaves. I will go to this layer first at the top, then tap the plus. Then for our brush, let's go back to the pens and use the G pen. And for the color, we'll use this one over here. That's the second color in the fourth row. And then let's just draw some leaves in the foreground, and also some like little branches with leaves. You can keep it very simple, but this will really nicely frame our landscape. Gonna add more over here. And perhaps one here. For this, again, you don't have to make an exact copy. Just do what feels good to you with these leaves. And you can use the paint bucket close or to fill these shapes, I mean. And then just grab the brush again. And now let's do the same over here on this side. Let's add some leaves over here as well. Maybe some here. Then grab the paint bucket, fill the areas, and grab your brush again. And then let's zoom out. This is a nice extra touch. Next, let's also add some more flowers, add a touch of color. Let's go to our brushes and use the textured pen. And for the color, we'll use these two. Let's start with this one. That's the 7th color in the 4th row. Size of my brush is at 12, opacity at 100. And let's make some random shapes. I'm making these like jagged motions, a bit horizontally, to add some patches of these flowers. Perhaps a few over here. A few here. And let's go darker by grabbing this color, 8th color in the 4th row. We can use that in the more, like the darker areas. Few over here. Just make sure you don't go over your leaves. If you would like to have some flowers behind them, then you should have a layer underneath those leaves. But I think we can manage like this. I think this should be enough, and I think we can move on to the most fun part. Let's paint our clouds. For our clouds, we need a new layer. We'll make that on top of our sky layer here. So first select that, then tap the plus. Then let's go to the brushes, and then we'll go to the brush section, and then we'll use the paint and apply brush. And for the color, we'll grab this one over here. That's the 5th color in the 1st row. Let's zoom out a little bit. We'll keep the opacity of the brush at 100%. Let's make the size a bit bigger. Let's go for something around maybe 50. Let's see. Yeah, that's okay for now. Let's start here. Make a shape over here. We'll just make some big shapes first. And over here, behind our tree. Now let's go smaller. Let's go for 30%. And now we can refine these clouds a bit more. And this one. So you can see that I'm making small circular motions. Some clouds over here. We'll add more and more as we make our brush smaller and smaller. Some here. Small circular motions. Now let's go smaller even. Let's go to around 10. And now we can really add more detail to our clouds. Add these small wispy areas. and make some of the edges of the clouds a bit more crisp. The smaller you make this brush, the crisper the edges become. Wispy areas underneath here. Short little dabs. Over here, keep the underside relatively flat. Some more wispy parts here. Still short circular motions. Adding more little bumps to this cloud. Perhaps extra little clouds over here. And like I said, the underside is pretty flat. All the bumps are like at the top of the clouds. Then over here, lots of wispy stuff. And everything's kind of like pointing or guiding the viewer towards our main character, our tree. Perhaps you'll see a few little wispy clouds in between the branches. Next, we are going to add some light touches. Let's first lock our transparent pixels. So tap the layer, lock the transparent pixels, and then for the color, move to the next one, 6th color in the first row. It's a bit yellowish. And let's go along the edges of the clouds, mostly on the right sides. Just like we did with the tree and with the rocks. Still make those circular motions. Perhaps we can make the brush a little bit bigger, like 17. Short circular motions, lighting the edges of these clouds. This one as well. And here, let's go for the underside, imagining a lot of light is coming from this lower area. And over here as well, that underside. Circular motions. Next, we'll grab a darker color. Let's grab this one, 8 color in the first row. And we'll use that to add a few like shadow areas. Also rounded, well, like circular motions. Adding extra touches to these clouds. This is a very simple way to create interesting looking clouds. This one, again, still circular motions, and over here. Then I'd like to blur this a little bit. So we need to go to this little icon, then to Effects, then apply it to the current layer, select Gaussian blur, and let's go for, well, what shall we do? Perhaps something like this, 35, and then tap OK. Next, I'd like to add some extra color to our clouds. I'd like to do that with the soft brush under spray. And for the color, we'll grab this pink one over here, 6th color in the 4th row. And let's gently go over this area here, adding a pink touch to those clouds here. And let's also grab this 6th color in the 1st row, that yellowish color, and use that a little bit here at the top, like this, and also a little bit over here, bringing the colors of the clouds together a bit. Let's also make the brush a little bit smaller, like 50, and go over the underside here, for instance, adding some lighter touches. You could also lighten up some of the smaller clouds, and we could go even lighter by using the 4th color in the 1st row. And we can use that on these small clouds, for instance. Adding an extra light touch. I think that looks nice. Now I'd like to make another layer in between the sky layer and the clouds layer. So let's select this one first and tap the plus. Then let's make our brush bigger again, like around 200, maybe even bigger, to, well, 300. And for the color, let's grab this one, 4th color in the 3rd row. Then let's go over this lower area with these diagonal strokes, adding some of the yellow there. And then let's go, well, maybe a bit more here. Let's go even lighter by using this one, 6th color in the 1st row. Let's add a bit of that over here. And then finally, let's add a bit more pink with that 6th color in the 4th row. Let's go here, add some warmth, like this. Then for a final touch, I'd like to add some sparkle, some like, sparkles or stars in our sky that will just add that final nice touch. Let's make a new layer for that. Let's tap the plus. Then for our brush, let's go to the decoration brushes and use the glitter brush. If you tap this little arrow, you'll see that I have the particle size set to 16.9. So try something close to that. And then for the color, let's grab this one, 3rd color in the 1st row. And then let's add some sparkles. You can just use multiple taps in some areas to create a bright sparkle. And to make them even brighter, you can tap the layer, tap normal, and go to color dodge. This will make them look extra bright. So just go ahead, add some little sparkles here and there. Perhaps some are grouped a little bit. Now, if you want to add a bit more of a glow to these, what you can do is tap this layer with these sparkles, then go to duplicate layer, then go to this bottom one, then to the effects over here, apply to current layer, use Gaussian blur, and just blur that layer slightly to add a little bit of a glow, and then tap OK. And there you have your gorgeous landscape in Clip Studio Paint. If you want to export your masterpiece, you can go to these 3 little dots and go to Export Image. And here you can select your sharing format, a PNG, a JPEG, or a PSD, which will have all the layers. And now when you tap share, you can either send it by email, save it as a file. Also, you can share your work on social media. Don't forget to tag me when you do, because I would love to see your results. And then I will see you next time for the next tutorial. Thank you for watching.